So I figured that there's probably three different main areas to talk about the tour, and one would be the actual shows themselves. Two was the kind of the life that we lived outside of the tour and the places we went and saw along the way doing the actual shows. And then the third one, we want to talk about the logistics that actually went into it and how we went about actually making it happen and the realities of the financial part of it. So today we want to talk about the gigs. And the first one of those gigs that we did was starting at the Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium with three other bands.
Yes, so we played the Carolina Review, which hopefully was the first of many in an ongoing series of multi-band showcases. And we'd never done a showcase before, which was a really cool and interesting experience. We've done festivals and we've done things where we've opened for people or people have opened for us, but it was different having all of these bands together and all of us working together to curate and create this show. So we played with Strange Bird, who are out of Spartanburg, Remedy 58, who are also out of Spartanburg, and then our friends Vagabond Crow, who are out of the Hendersonville, Asheville area.
It was our first show ever as a full band. We had my brother Wayne Redden on drums and my nephew Cole Lauder on bass, and they are both from the band the Log Noggins out of Asheville.
Yes.
So it was like the very hard rocking, loud version of Brown Mountain Lightning Bugs. It's by far the loudest show we've ever played, and it was like really an aggressive sound compared to how we normally sound as a duo. So it was kind of fun to get to exercise that out of us like a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I talked in a previous video about how collaborating with other people allows you to hear what your songs or potentials are. And so this was an opportunity to hear our songs played in a different way and to dream up potential for what those songs can sound like as we record, as we play other shows.
Our second show of the tour was at the Kansas City Central Public Library in Kansas City, Missouri. And that was a really cool. When we first went in there, we were kind of nervous because it's like a library atmosphere, right? So it's real quiet and things are real reserved. And they had us set up right in just in the middle of the floor, in the middle of this really beautiful 6-story, mostly open air library. And we were like, oh man, we're going to be too loud. And as it turns out, they have music in there all the time. And it was really empty, and then as soon as we started playing, like literally 3 seconds into the first few notes, all of a sudden all these seats started filling in with people, and people were standing around, and there was actually a pretty good crowd. And it was really neat because there was this very beautiful natural reverb just from all of the stone and huge open space of the building. And so we ended on 100 Miles Gone, which if you know that song, it's got this big a cappella ending. And the reverb on that a cappella ending was just gorgeous. It sounded like we were in some big, huge cathedral or something. And I really enjoyed that.
So the next place we played was Mustang, Oklahoma. It was one of the best shows we played. So we played at their Parks and Rec Center, the 55 Plus Center. And so our audience that evening was primarily retirees. And they were the kindest and most generous audience that we had pretty much the whole tour. Had great conversations. They had cookies and gave us Reese's cups and all kinds of other things, and they were just so kind and so attentive. And then after that, we got on the road to Amarillo. We drove, just did a late drive into Amarillo to play at Leftwoods, which was a neat place as well. They were super gracious and gave us a place to stay for 2 nights in their band house, which was great. Gave us a chance to catch up on sleep and shower and cook some food for the road the next day.
And they had a really nice stage. Like,
oh yeah,
not
stage
many
was
of
awesome.
A lot of the bars we play don't really have that great of stages. If they have a stage, we're kind of like in a corner or something, you know. But they had a really nice stage, and they had a good sound guy who really knew what he was doing.
Yeah, totally was great.
So that was a fun show, and that one, It was
We
kind of
had
like
lights. We had a light show, which we had a little bit of in Spartanburg, but this was like full on. He knew what to do. Like he could read what we were getting ready to do in the song.
Yeah, he was
and
throwing like effects on the vocals too at certain parts and stuff.
He was so on it. It was awesome. And we had a nice little crowd there that night, and people seemed to be enjoying it. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm just now noticing that we played like a really loud gig in Spartanburg, and then Kansas City was quiet, relatively, and then we played another really quiet gig in Mustang, and then we went back to playing a really loud gig in Leftwoods, because that was more like a rock and roll, even though it's just two of us, you know.
And then to continue the pattern, we played a completely acoustic show. Our next show after Amarillo was in Phoenix at Fiddler's Dream, which is an all-acoustic music coffee house. They don't have any amplification or anything like that.
That was so fun.
So we did the whole gamut of things. We did a duo show, a full band show, and then completely acoustic, which we haven't done except for like a wedding in a while.
Yeah, and it was the room was set up because I didn't bring an acoustic banjo, so I had to play my electric banjo, which is not very loud when it's not plugged in. But it was good enough in that room, and there was a small enough crowd that was like really attentive on the music that I could play that completely electric banjo and you could still hear it, and it was good.
Yeah, and we played that night with Jeff and Jesse, who are a duo out of the Phoenix area, who are super kind people, incredible songwriters, incredible singers, incredible players. They're awesome. I'm going to put their links and stuff down below. You should go like them and comment on their stuff and subscribe and buy their EP, because it's good stuff. And Naya put that whole show together, and she was just the sweetest person to work with. Loves dogs, so we were kindred spirits from the start. It was a tiny coffee shop and a small crowd, but they were so invested. They sang along with us, which sometimes, like, when I try to get people to sing along, it's hit or miss. So sometimes I just embarrass myself, but they sang along with us and talked to us afterwards. And we're just very, very sweet people. So I would love to go back there next time we're on tour. I loved Phoenix. We'll talk about that in our other video, but I really like Phoenix a lot. We left Phoenix and we were like, oh man, we're gonna have to drive through the night to get to Mariposa, California, where our next show is. And
this was the first time on this trip that we had done that, and we were like, in the course of doing that, we'd kind of done it to get to Amarillo, but not really.
Yeah.
And we were like, man, we're never going to do that.
Yeah, we're
again.
like, no, this is the only time. And we kept saying, like, okay, it was really bad, but it's the only time we're going to have to do that on this tour. It's the only time we're going to have to do that on this tour.
We did it 3 more times.
It was not the only time we did it. We drove through the night multiple times.
4 times.
With
no...
And it was, the worst one was on the way home.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But anyway, so we did make it to Mariposa the next day, probably around, I think we got there around 11 or 12. We were able to rest for about half an hour, take a nap before our show, and we opened for Whisker Man, who are a band out of Oakland, California, and their links are also going to be down below.
They were incredible.
Go listen to them, buy their stuff. They're so good. And we played at the Grove House, which is like a little brewery, winery place. We played kind of earlier in the evening, like 7 o'clock-ish, and people kind of filtered in after dinner. We had some hikers come in from the UK who sat and listened to us for a long time, and that was super cool. And then Whiskerman took the stage and, like, just obliterated everything. It was amazing.
The place was packed, and it's a small place, but it was packed.
There was hardly any room. Like, I had to dip out and go to bed because we had been up for close to 48 hours, and I was dying.
And had played 2 gigs in that time.
But, man, was that a super fun show. And just, highly entertaining to watch. Even if you can't go see them live, like, find some live videos of them playing, because, like, they've got everything, and they're so, like, on their game with, like, everything that they do. So that was our second to last show of the tour, and we had several days off between Mariposa and our last show, which was in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And so we just took those days to zigzag and drive back across the country.
A quarter of the way through the trip, the air conditioning compressor on my car started seizing up, and I cut it off in the middle of that, and that allowed the pulley to keep spinning without locking up, which it would have eventually. And so we had no air conditioning as we drove through the desert for the rest of the trip.
We got to Eureka Springs. We did another drive all the way through the night thing. So Eureka Springs is a really neat little town in the Ozarks, and it's one of those things that you just have to if you can't go there at some point in your life, look it up. I want to go back just to visit. We had a ton of fun playing at Brews, and we played kind of just a regular 7 to 9 set there, and it was
a good show. It was
a really good show. Lots of really kind people, and so attentive, and listened and asked questions and wanted to talk to us. And one guy came and bought a CD for his little girl and his little boy, and was like, "Hey, we're gonna have fun and listen to this on the way home because they don't live here, and so now we can listen to them even when they're not here." And that was so humbling and sweet. Those little things mean the world to me, and I think that's my biggest takeaway, is that people are good, and we love them. We love you people. So I would like to, before I sign off, say thank you to all of the venues who had us out, to Teresa Bolton at the Kansas City Public Library, Gene Heasley in Mustang, Oklahoma, Civic and Zeus at Leftwood, Civic for putting it together, Zeus for for getting us settled when we came wandering into the bar at almost closing time the night we got there. Who else? Naya at Fiddler's Dream, Nate at the Grove House, everybody at Brews.
Also, all the bands that we played with.
Yeah, Whisker Man, Jeff and Jesse,
Strange Bird, Remedy 58,
Strange Bird.
Vagabond Crow.
Yeah, I mean, and
Log Noggins for letting us borrow 2/3 of them.
Two-thirds of the Log Noggins. So if you've enjoyed our tour exploits and following us on here, make sure you subscribe. Follow us on all the social medias. Please follow the bands and venues down below. Give them some love as well. And stay tuned for some more of these tour recaps.
Yeah, next time we're going to talk about some of the places we saw outside of the venues we played.